Hello everyone. In today's session, we will learn about Stochastic Gradient Descent, commonly known as SGD. In the previous lecture, we studied gradient descent and ML basics, where the model uses the entire training dataset to calculate the gradient before updating its parameter. However, when datasets become very large, this approach becomes slow and computationally expensive. To solve this problem, stochastic gradient descent was introduced. SGD updates the model using only one training example at a time, making the learning process much faster. In this presentation, we will understand how SGD works, compare it with batch gradient descent and mini batch gradient descent, discuss the role of noise, learning rate, schedules, momentum, and practical techniques used during training. Before we begin, let us look at today's agenda. First, we will understand why traditional gradient descent is not suitable for very large dataset. Next, we will study the update rule of a stochastic gradient descent. Then we will compare batch gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent, and mini batch gradient descent. After that, we will discuss how randomness or noise affects learning. We will also learn about learning rate schedules, momentums, epochs, shuffling, and different variants of SGD that are widely used in deep learning. Let us first understand why SGD was developed. In standard gradient descent, the gradient is calculated using the entire training dataset before updating the model parameters. For every large datasets, such as ImageNet or web-scale text data containing millions of samples, this process becomes extremely slow. It also requires a large amount of memory because the entire dataset must be processed before one update is made. Instead of waiting for the complete dataset, SGD estimates the gradient using only a small portion of the data. Although this estimate is not perfectly accurate, it usually points in the correct direction. As a result, SGD performs many quick updates instead of a few slow updates, making training much more efficient. Now let us understand the update rule of stochastic gradient descent. Unlike batch gradient descent, which uses all the training examples, SGD randomly selects one training example. The gradient is calculated using only that sample. The parameters are then immediately updated using the formula shown on the slide. This process repeats for every training example because updates happen after every sample. Learning is much faster. Although each update is noisy, the model gradually moves toward the minimum loss after many iterations. This slide compares the three most common optimization strategies. The first is batch gradient descent, where the entire dataset is used for one parameter update. It produces an accurate gradient, but is a slow and requires a large amount of memory. The second is stochastic gradient descent, where only one training example is used for each update. It is extremely fast and requires very little memory, but the update are noisy. The third is mini batch gradient descent, where a small batch of samples, usually used between 32 and 256, is used for each update. Mini batch gradient descent combines the advantages of both approaches. It is fast, memory efficient, and provides more stable gradient estimates. Therefore, mini batch gradient descent is the standard optimization method used in modern deep learning. One unique characteristic of SGD is that its updates are noisy. This noise has both advantages and disadvantages. On the positive side, the randomness helps the optimizer escape shallow local minima and saddle points. It also acts as a form of regularization, often improving the model's ability to generalize to unseen data. Because updates happen frequently, the model also makes rapid progress during the early stages of training. However, noises also creates some challenges. The loss value fluctuates instead of decreasing smoothly. The optimizers may contain oscillating around the minimum instead of settling exactly at it. Therefore, the techniques such as learning rate decay are needed to achieve stable convergence. Earlier, we learned that the learning rate controls the size of each update. Instead of keeping the learning rate constant throughout the training, it is often reduced gradually. This process is called a learning rate schedule. Initially, a larger learning rate allows the optimizer to explore the search space quickly. Later, a smaller learning rate enables fine adjustments near the minimum. This slide shows three common learning rate schedules. The first is step decay, where the learning rate decreases after a fixed number of epochs. The second is exponential decay, where the learning rate decreases smoothly over time. The third is cosine annealing, where the learning rate follows a cosine shaped curve and gradually approaches zero. These schedules improve convergence and help producers better performing models. Although SGD is fast, its updates can be irregular. Memento is introduced to reduce this problem. Memento keeps track of previous gradients and combines them with the current gradient. Instead of changing direction after every noise update, the optimizer develops momentum and continues moving in the most promising direction. This reduces oscillations, speeds up convergence, and allows the optimizer to pass through smoke small local minima more easily. The parameter beta controls how much information from previous updates is retained. In practice, a value of approximately zero point 0.9 is commonly used. Now let us understand two important concepts used during SGD training. An epoch means one complete pass through the entire training dataset. Before every epoch begins, the training data is usually shuffled. Shuffling changes the order of the training examples. This prevents the model from learning patterns based on the sequence of the data. After shuffling, the dataset is divided into small mini batches. Each mini batch is processed one after another. After all batches are processed, one epoch is complete and the process repeats until training finishes. Shuffling improves generalization and helps the optimizer learn more efficiently. Like every optimization algorithm, SGD has both advantages and disadvantages. Some of its major advantages are it scales well to very large datasets, it requires very little memory, frequent updates make early learning much faster. The inherent noise can help the optimizer escape poor local minima. It is also simple to implement. However, SGD also has some disadvantages. The loss fluctuates because of noisy updates. Choosing the correct learning rate is very important. Without momentum, SGD may struggle in narrow valleys or ravines. Finally, because it's processed one sample at a time, it may require many iterations before reaching convergence. Several improved versions of SGD have been developed. The first is vanilla SGD, which is the basic form of the algorithm. The second is the SGD with momentum, which uses previous gradients to smooth the updates. The third is Nesterov accelerated gradient, which looks ahead before computing the gradient. This allows it to correct overshooting earlier than standard momentum. The fourth is SGD with weight decay. This method adds L2 regularization directly into the parameter update. Weight decay reduces overfitting by preventing the model parameters from becoming exclusively large. These variants improve the speed, stability, and generalization of SGD. Let us summarize today's session. Stochastic gradient descent updates the model using one training sample at a time, making it much faster than batch gradient descent. Although the updates are noisy, this randomness often helps the optimizer escape poor local minima. Mini batch gradient descent combines the speed of SGD with the stability of batch gradient descent and is the most commonly used optimization techniques today. Learning rate schedules and momentum further improve training stability and convergence. These optimization techniques are fundamental components of almost every modern deep learning models. That's all for today's session. Thank you.